All right. Good afternoon. I can't tell you how delighted we are to be joined by Martin Griffiths, the Special Envoy for Yemen, who is joining us from Amman, Jordan. He just briefed the Security Council. So I will turn it over for Martin to say a few words, and then as this is a stakeout, we'll just take a few questions. So Martin, please go ahead. Okay, try it again. Martin?
Okay.
Perfect.
Are we on?
Victory in our time.
Hooray.
Let's go ahead.
Hooray.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Martin.
Okay, thanks a lot. Let me start. Thanks a lot, Stefan. So, look, yes, I just had a very good meeting with Security Council, as Stefan mentioned, on the situation in Yemen, and I'd like to thank the Council. One of the great pieces of good fortune for Yemen, a rare moment, is the Council's consistent, unified support to the work of the United Nations, humanitarian agencies, and indeed my own process. As you heard probably in my briefing, over 1,000 families are rejoicing today and tomorrow as the ICRC aircraft fly more than 1,000 detainees and prisoners home to their families. The largest release operation in ICRC's experience during the course of hostilities since the Korean War. This is a really tangible example of what can be done, and this was achieved through a face-to-face meeting. I think that's important, a face-to-face meeting, indeed in Switzerland. Thank you, Switzerland, for hosting it, in which the two sides batted it out, negotiated this very detailed agreement. So it's great for the 1,050 families. It's terrific for people in Yemen who can see something be done. I also briefed the Council on military developments in Yemen, which continue to be very alarming. The battle for Marib is in a state of lull at the moment. There has been a battle in Hodeidah, which ended after the mission there, and I myself called for a pause. But it just shows that the appetite for battle remains vivid and present, and we have to get past that, obviously. Where do we stand now? On the prisoners, we hope to see the operation finalised by tomorrow. Then we will bring the parties together with ICRC to agree on the next group of releases, and eventually we hope to get all prisoners out. I hope that meeting will take place soon. We're not sure where, but it'll be a physical meeting. I continue with the parties on the text of a joint declaration. You know about this document. It includes a nationwide ceasefire, specific economic and humanitarian measures to improve the lives of people in Yemen, better respond to the threat of COVID-19, and resumption of the political process. It's taken 7 months of negotiation, almost all virtual and shuttle, and it started since the SG's call for a global ceasefire and was motivated by that, which received a huge groundswell of support in Yemen. It's 7 months. My view is that we are getting closer and closer to eliminating the issues of contention, and we need to get it over the line. That Yemen can't wait, and we need to get it there. It is, however, not surprising that it's taken this long, and I'm not discouraged. It's a big agreement. It's got 3 big agenda items, and in a time of the pandemic, it's not surprising that it takes that long to come to a conclusion. But we are closing in. I was in Riyadh this week, very good meetings there. My deputy was in Muscat the week before, very good meetings there. Good meetings go so far. We need to see that document signed. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Martin. We'll go to Edie Leder of the Associated Press.
Hi, Mr. Griffiths. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, we thank you very much for doing this briefing. It's greatly appreciated. I have several follow-up questions. You talked about thousands of detainees and prisoners still awaiting release. How many thousands? Are they all Yemenis, or are some of them third country nationals? And also on the negotiations that you're engaging in, what are your next steps? You obviously say it's not surprising. How long is it going to take to get the joint declaration over the line, and what really needs to be done to get it there? Thank you.
Go ahead, Martin.
Sure, thanks a lot. Very good and very precise questions, to which, of course, I'll not give any precise answers. On the issue of the numbers of the detainees and prisoners still, the number of 15,000 was at first mooted in terms of the overall numbers, but I don't think it's an accurate figure. I think it's much less than that. And we're talking about those, particularly those captured in war. This doesn't, that there are those who are detained for other reasons, as you know, we see it so much in Syria. But I think we're talking about thousands, we're not talking about 15,000. It includes, obviously, some people from the coalition who have also been captured in battle, but the overwhelming majority, 95%, are Yemenis from both sides. And the complexity of a negotiation to get them out is because the two parties have to agree, where is Mr. X? Are they a priority to go out first? And how many of the prisoners held by Ansarallah are worth the prisoners held by the government of Yemen, ideally, obviously equal? So it's a very technical, detailed, granular discussion. And it's taken an awful lot of time to get us where we are today. But it has that magic, iconic feeling of the fact that these are individuals whose lives will now change for the good. Each one will go home. That's a remarkable moment. The next steps on my 7-month journey with the parties on the joint declaration, I think we need to get it over the line within weeks, not months. Now, I've always been criticized for making predictions, and my colleagues are always telling me to be careful, and they're quite right. But I think that is what we're looking at. And I say that because I know what the parties think of the specifics, and I know how we, I think, can bridge the gap between them and meet their aspirations. So it's weeks, not months, I hope this year.
Thank you. James Bays, Al Jazeera, and then Abdel.
Yes, Special Envoy, James Bays from Al Jazeera. I'd like to follow up on that last point that you just raised, because you said you were not going to be precise. You were quite precise with this year. What then, after you get the joint declaration, is the next phase? Do you have a Stockholm II in mind?
No. One of the benefits, if you like, of having a very long gestation of negotiation for this agreement, very different from the Stockholm Agreement, which was quickly put together and agreed, as you know, is that we've all spent an enormous amount of time looking at implementation. You know, managing a nationwide ceasefire in a country like Yemen, which has a lot of local conflicts, a lot of militias, questions of command and control, requires mechanisms, including, crucially, as you know, civil society observation and monitoring also at the local level, as well as the involvement of the parties. And getting that mechanism right is something we've been working on, I'll be very frank with you, since December. And of course we have military and security people working for us to do that. And what we're doing is we're working it through with the party's military to make it work. I have quite a lot of confidence that a nationwide ceasefire, which would change the lives of everybody in Yemen, in this case, the mechanism, which will be under the United Nations, will broadly work. But as you know, and as I know from my own direct experience of many, many years of managing ceasefires, they never work perfectly. They never work perfectly. And one of the things that you need to do in managing a ceasefire is not allow breach to bring the whole thing down, and look at the broad strategic pattern rather than the individual incident. I think we're going to be able to do that. We've got a lot of support from member states, also a lot of support from the party's militaries, and in that I include, of course, the coalition. It's very interesting to see how the coalition forces Saudi and other forces, coalition forces, are acting in regard to the implementation of the Riyadh Agreement. So implementation, what we will look at is implementation of the ceasefire, implementation of the agreements on the airport, the ports, the roads, and so forth, that package of measures. And then, and here's what we all want to get to, is to launch that long delayed political process. What the joint declaration can hope to do is to end the shooting war, as I put it, and to make life better for people in Yemen. But it doesn't create peace. As you know, peace is much more complicated, much more complex, will take longer, will require a very inclusive process in a way that is not quite so much the case with preparations for a ceasefire. So the joint declaration is one thing, but a political settlement is what we're going to want to move ahead to as soon as we can thereafter.
Thank you. Abdelhamid Sayam.
Thank you, Special Envoy. My name is Abdelhamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi, and I have a series of small questions about Yemen. I want to hear from you about the presence of Al-Qaeda. Is it still active in Yemen, in any part of Yemen? My second related question, what's going on in the island of Socotra? We know that the official army of the legitimate government withdrew from that, and the Saudi as well. And the third question, which is also in the area, why the United Arab Emirates did not chip in the humanitarian aid to Yemen this year, while they last year they put $500 million, this year they put zero. Is there any explanation for that? Thank you very much.
Shall I do that, Stephanie?
Yes, please.
Your first question on Al-Qaeda is, I think, very important. I think Yemen doesn't have the scourge of Al-Qaeda in the way that we see it, of course, elsewhere in the region, as you know better than me. That isn't to say that it could become in a situation of chaos, and if the war continues beyond what we would like to see and what we're working to stop, we could see Al-Qaeda and indeed ISIS grow and become more of a threat, for example, as you know, to the shipping lanes of the Red Sea, which would be of such huge strategic importance. But I'm not saying it's not an important subject, but it doesn't have the centrality in the discussions about how to resolve the Yemen conflict that we see, for example, we have seen in Iraq and Syria and elsewhere. Thank goodness for that. Socotra is, of course, from my point of view, an integral part of Yemen, naturally, which is what it is. The government of Yemen has owns it, of course. And every so often there are these incidents which you're describing, which challenge that contention. I think it's extraordinarily important, and I speak to people in the Emirates as well as, of course, in Riyadh and in other countries in the region a lot, Oman, etc. It's incredibly important to keep Yemen together. This is important not simply from some doctrine of territorial integrity, but it's incredibly important for the benefit and the welfare of the people of Yemen. A Yemen which is ruptured is a Yemen that will have even more difficulty providing resources for its citizens. One of the reasons why we are such huge supporters of the Riyadh Agreement and the Saudi leadership with the government of Yemen and the SDC to grow the government of Yemen and contain the aspirations for now of the people of the South is that we think those aspirations need to be discussed after we've stopped the war, so that the people of Yemen, not us, the people of Yemen can decide what Yemen is going to look like and do it in a civil, politic and considered way. And I met with the Idrus Zubaydi of the Southern Transitional Council a couple of days ago in Riyadh, and you know I meet him very often, and he knows that this is where we're going, and he agrees with it. Of course, the South has their aspirations. You know it better than me, but these are aspirations which I believe, from the United Nations point of view, need to be addressed when there is the space, when there is the political opportunity of the leaders of Yemen to address it together without outside pressure. On the United Arab Emirates and their humanitarian funding, I'm afraid that's not my subject, I'm glad to say. I'm sure they have done a great deal elsewhere. I must say this, though. I must say this. The UAE has been an extraordinary partner in the work that I've been doing for 2.5 years. They've always been very responsive to my pleas for to reduce the campaign here, to stop it there. They were very important, by the way, I think behind the scenes in Hodeidah recently, where there has been now a calm restored to Hodeidah. They were obviously very important in 2018, leading to that Stockholm Agreement. So I look on the Emirates as a friend. I also look on the Emirates as an important player in the region who need to remain engaged with Yemen because they owe it to Yemen to engage and help provide the stability. What I've always said, sorry, this is my last point, what I've always said about the interests of the region is that these are not spoiler interests. These are interests which are exactly what you and I would want. We want a stable, accountable Yemen, which meets the aspirations of its citizens, doesn't interfere in neighbouring states, keeps the sea lanes safe. This is what I see very strongly in the region are the not just the policies of people in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi and elsewhere, but actually the practices. The leadership that, for example, just to take one example, the Saudi leadership, and I was in Riyadh and met Prince Khalid the other day, is of enormous importance to us, to try to move this thing, to use that term, to get it across the line. Yemen can make it, and we should make it before it gets more complicated. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll squeeze in one last question. Margaret Bashir, Voice of America.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Mr. Griffiths. Thank you so much. A couple quickies. First of all, on the detainee release today, were there any women by any chance released? Secondly, you were talking about a nationwide ceasefire would change lives, and then you said the joint declaration can end the shooting war. So is it correct to link them together, or could the joint declaration happen independently of a ceasefire and a ceasefire independently of the joint declaration? And just quickly, thirdly, on the Safar tanker, the Yemeni envoy said the Houthis are using it as political blackmail. Could you just tell us what the biggest problem is in trying to get your teams in there? We've been hearing about this for months and months. So what's the problem right now?
Thank you. Please.
Sure. Yeah. So go ahead, sir. So very
go ahead.
quickly, I don't think there were any women in that 1,050 or 1,080. And I was asked this, by the way, when I met some women activists in Riyadh a couple of days ago. And my answer is, I didn't choose those. The parties decided who was going to be on that list, and the parties decided that it was going to be those 1,050. No women yet. We need to get them on the list, obviously, and particularly, as the women in Riyadh were telling me, particularly the detained women, of which there are many. detained for political issues or activism. We need to get them out, and I think that's a whole different campaign that needs to happen. Nationwide ceasefire is integral to the joint declaration. It's item 1 on the joint declaration. So it's not an either or. It is what the joint declaration brings to the table, and the reason why I think it's a good deal is because it'll be a managed one. It'll be national. The Hodeidah one was subnational, and that didn't meet the military needs to stop forces going from one front to another. So a nationwide ceasefire is what we have in mind. On Safa, daily negotiations, of course, with the Ansar Allah, who, by the way, are very aware, to my certain knowledge, they are very aware of the looming catastrophe that this tanker represents. The issues that UNOPS, the Office of Project Services, with support from us and OCHA, have been dealing with on a far too long, obviously, is what will this assessment mission do? What does it need to bring when it goes to Djibouti and then across the Red Sea to the Safa tanker? What skills, what materials, what will be the outcome, and can we do it quickly? I think we are very, very close, which is still very belated, but very close to what we have been wanting to see all along, which is that the green light needs to come from Ansar Allah so these people will go to Djibouti and be allowed to go across the Red Sea to the tanker. What happens after that mission is what that mission is there to recommend. And, all of us wake up every morning worrying if something has happened overnight. It's that kind of sword of Damocles. Thank you very much.
Martin, thank you very much. I know it's late in Amman. Apologies to all those who wanted to ask questions but could not. But now that we've established the technical possibility of you briefing the press, I know you'll be back very soon, Martin. So,
Of course.
of course, indeed. All right. No, thank you, and
Thank you
thanks
so
to your
much.
team.